We are the keepers of our future and our past, and the names of our heroes past and gone, on whose courage, strength, and wisdom the Northshield stands. Teach their stories to your children, to our children, till their names are written in our blood and
Welcome
bone.
to Griffin's Tale. This is a series where we hear the stories of the people of Northshield from the people of Northshield. I'm your host, Queen Ellis, and today our honored guest is Aldis. You want to tell us a bit about yourself?
Yes, it's actually Asdis.
Oh, I said it wrong. Sorry.
That's quite all right. I am Asdis Stefansdottir, Baroness of the Court, founding Baroness of Jararvellir. I have the dragon's heart. I was Kingdom Mistress of Arts for a short time. I was principal of the Order of the Willow, which I believe has been retired. And my recollections, some are somewhat vague. It's been many years since I lived in the confines of the Viking barony, which it was established as. But pretty clear on the early days.
Okay, cool. My apologies for mispronouncing your name. I should have asked you that before we started.
That's quite all right.
Well, I really appreciate you wanting to share your stories with us. So let's get started at the beginning. How did you find the SCA and how did you start?
Well, I had gone to California with my two children. My son was 2, I believe, and my daughter almost 4. And we left Minneapolis, Northshield, which wasn't there yet, and went to California. I met a fellow who became a good friend, and he lived in a commune. This was 70, I think, 70, 1970.
Okay.
One of his housemates was in the SCA, which neither of us had heard of, but he invited us to an event. So we made tangential plans, and someone scrabbled up some garb for us. My children went naked and wore flowers in their hair, which was fine because they were babies. We were invited. It was at San Anselmo Seminary, and it may have been a crown tourney. We were invited to take ease in the Royal Pavilion, which we did, and we sat the afternoon in the warm sun and were transported. You've heard that before. After a time, 3 months was all I could stand in the Westlands. That was it for me. I'm a Midwesterner. But the SCA at that time was maybe 4 or 5 years old. The original folks were still there. And we heard about their origin, which was that they were history majors or whatever, and they sat around and went, all of this is fine, but how did they feel? How did it feel to dress like that? What? And that was our story of the birth of the entire organization. We returned just before Christmas to Green Bay, which is where the lad's parents lived, and seeing snow and seeing Christmas lights was heavenly. I'm a Midwesterner. The West Kingdom was not for me. We then moved down to Madison just after the first of the year, which was 71, with the idea that Thomas would be going to university. We found a very nice place to live here. And after getting settled and getting the children settled and so on, we talked about it and thought that was an afternoon not to be forgotten, and we want to keep doing it. So we got the information about where to write and so on. And I believe Lady Burdai spoke correctly when she said that essentially what happened was that Thomas wrote a letter to the West and said, here we are, we're interested in establishing something. And they wrote back saying, congratulations, Baron. Do whatever you want. So we did. And having thought about it at some length, we decided that the barony would be Viking. His mother of blessed memory was Icelandic.
Oh.
And as that was familiar to him, he wanted to have a Viking or a Norse persona. Nothing could be further from my own heritage than a Norse persona. So that was what I chose as well, for exactly the opposite reason. Although when you grow up in Minneapolis, among Norwegian Lutherans,
Yep.
it's the next
They're everywhere.
best. Yeah, and I was. So the name Jararvellir is fake Icelandic for plains of the Yahara River.
Mm-hmm.
Thomas became Thomas Tolftungur, 12 tongues. He was indeed a linguist, spoke quite a number of languages, and had a familiarity.
Mm-hmm.
And that began the basis of it. Our first event was at a co-op. There are quite a few co-ops at the university here, or there were then.
Mm-hmm.
Nottingham Co-op, appropriately enough, said that they would host our event. So we had a feast, and it was at Nottingham Co-op. We gained 4 or 5 members or more that night. And there was a fellow whose name I can't remember, and those who know me know, I mean, my children need T-shirts with their names on. I recognize them, but I'm really bad with names. But 2 of them who lived in Nottingham participated, and the one fellow was very interested in medieval recipes. He made an exquisite meal, all from scratch, all from authentic recipes, and it really was a magical evening. As you can imagine, the garb was cobbled together, but it was really splendid. One of the dishes that he made was one called aplamoy, and he ground almonds in a mortar and pestle, and it was the real thing. I think that somewhere in the archaeological digs that are my basement, I may have the menu for it. I'm not sure. I don't know what's down there. But that was the first event, and that was the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
The first event that we went to somewhere else was in Michigan. By that time, and it was a year or 2 later, I think, by that time we had a nanny. Baron Thomas had a brother who came along to play, And his girlfriend served as nanny, and she was very popular with the children because she was diabetic. So she always had treats with her, and they thought that was grand. So we went to private land in Michigan and drove there. And by that time, there were fighting practices. We had a master at arms and so on. And we got to the site in Michigan very late. It was very late.
So was this like in the summer or?
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
Yeah. We had to park quite a distance from where we were camping. And by the time I and my entourage, by that time, by the way, well, let's see, it might have been in the fall. Let me think. It was 72 because by then the Baron and I had a third child who was a year old. By the time we got from the car, the fellow who had made the feast at Nottingham had set up himself a little fire deal, and he had hot cider for me. The tent was set up. I had a crib, a little porta-crib thing that they had set up. I mean, our camp, such as it was ready for me.
Oh, nice.
It was beyond nice. It was heavenly. But some of the things that happened at that event, there was a hill sort of next to where we were camped. At the top of the hill was Yang the Nauseating and the beginnings of the Dark Horde. And Queen Anne and King, this is terrible because he was a good friend. That may come to me. We're there. And the next morning, Yang himself, with his first lieutenant, came down the hill. And they invited us up to their camp. And his first lieutenant came down to take my hand and assist me up the hill. We went up the hill, never having heard of any part of this mine. They had an extraordinary yurt. There weren't very many of them there, but the yurt was all set up. They had a couple large walks in their fire pit, and it was an amazing camp. And we sat down, and Yang explained that it was their idea to emulate the Golden Horde. They wanted to play the game as well or better than the rest of us. And they were stunning. They were stunning. At one point, the men were talking about combat and history and so on. And Yang produced a medallion with an axe hanging from it. It was a Viking, this was 1972. Presented it to the Baron and said to him, "If we meet in battle, we will fight back to back, but never face to face." And that moment has stayed with me since then, as clear in my mind as though it were last week.
Wow.
I don't know what they're called now, but we called those moments come real moments when everything falls away and it's true. And that was the first of those that I experienced early on as it was. What came from all that was, among other things, I was sitting on the hillside during some fighting practice or something with my 1-year-old and Queen Anne, who had a child about the same age. And she had brought, see, how did that work? One of us had bottles and the other one had milk. I can't remember how it went out. So we traded off what we didn't have, and we were sitting with our infants watching this. And that was not a come real moment, but it was memorable. It was memorable. Some years later, when gas was rationed, I think it was in the 80s. And there was a fellow who had come to understand that he was also from east of here. I think it was Ohio. He was informed that his mother was failing and he couldn't afford to fly, so he was going to drive to California. And word again went around. He left where he was, drove to California. It took him 4 days, cost him nothing. Every place he stopped, he stayed with the SCA folk. He never left in the morning without a hamper of food to carry him through and money for gas or gas cans that he could, fill up. And when he got there, he was with her when she passed. And he sent word in the methods that we used then. This was long before the internet, and thanked everyone because he had made it an incredibly fast time at no personal expense and having been met with hospitality and kindness all the way. And that brought home what a true community it was. That was what it was like in the early days. And I mean, I don't know how it is now.
Actually, it's very similar. Probably the communication moves a little faster. I'm guessing you used the phone a lot in those days. But yeah, today, even if someone gets stuck somewhere or they have some sort of illness or whatever, people are more than happy they're the first ones to step in and offer help or, whatever they need. So that spirit is still alive and around today.
Yeah. Well, that's hard to, that can't be in any of the advertising or anything.
No.
But I think it we're all looking for tribes. We're all looking for community. And it isn't so much, we have to build our own now. And I think that's proven up by incidents like that. And it's not unique to the SCA because there are a lot of us old people who like to play dress up. Following my departure from the SCA, we decided that we wanted something a little more modern and convenient. So we now live in about 1780.
Okay.
And my husband is a fur trader and voyageur. And I am become a native woman, his wife, and we live in the North Country. Nothing else is the same, but the community, the sense of community, and the come real moments are there. So that was basically the beginning of it. we've had people so remarkable, and some are gone. And people like Shava, who there was one event, and I don't remember where, but she was in a tiny little room lined with crock pots, and she put out the most exquisite feast wherever we were of wonderful dishes, you know. I don't know if she knew that we knew, but I knew. I mean, whoa, that was something else. I had a bard, Rodir, who at one event, I think it was this time of year because it was around my birthday, and as a gift, he recited for me 5 denials on Merlin's grave. And you may not be familiar with that. I really recommend. It was a song written by, I believe, Martin Carthy. He was in a band called the Incredible String Band, which where it's at in 1974. But it's a history of Britain.
Okay.
The Picts, the Celts, it's absolutely remarkable, and it is a bardic poem, pages long, and he recited it for me at a feast. He made my, I don't know if you can see it, he made my Thor's hammer.
Mm-hmm. Very nice.
And a number of other things. There was a man, I can, believe it or not, I can only remember his mundane name. He passed away not long ago. He was, he lived in Bear Valley, which is a tiny little rural area here in Wisconsin. And he was like the deputy sheriff.
Mm-hmm.
Short fellow, little guy. And he took up wood burning and had a Norse heritage and really went into it. And he had in Bear Valley, he had a little tavern. And in those days, when they ordered beer, I'm falling apart. It came in wooden boxes.
Oh, okay.
And he saved these wooden boxes and sanded them and so on, and wood burned them in and out with Celtic knotwork and exquisite designs. And I have one. It's, there are artifacts like that are unequaled. I have other pieces. You can't really see it. I managed to get my banner up. My arms are a sheaf of wheat with 3 drops of blood representing my children falling from it. And I submitted it, and they said, very nice, go for it. And I understand it's not that easy anymore.
Yeah, they have a few more rules probably since when you made that.
Well, they did. They went through the book in England, and I mean, they did all that, but there were few enough people that it wasn't like anyone else's.
No conflicts.
But you can see maybe there's a piece of wood burning behind it that was Summerbird. It was Summerbird. That's his name. And his daughter took it up, and I have a number of exquisite wood-burned bowls and trays and things that she's made. My cornet, which is, I have one that I couldn't find, and I was disappointed, but this is silver, and these are buttons actually, and they're engraved with catfish.
Oh, wow.
It was made by Lady, well, that may come to me too. It's Ingrid, everyone knows her.
Oh, Ingrid the Crafty?
No.
No, not right. Ingrid.
I should have asked for people's names.
They can hit him in the comments later on.
Yes, yeah, well, yes. And my apologies to Ingrid. She's masterful in many things. We had Lady Friederin, who was an older lady. Now it's me saying she was an older lady, so she was an older lady who joined at some point, who became a very, very close friend. She and her husband passed last year or the year before. Great loss, but she made my banner. She made many other banners. She made a St. Bunstable's banner. She made banners. She made garb. Her husband always dressed as a monk. He didn't, he was a Quaker fella. And very simple. A fabulous, however, photographer. And she made so many things. I mean, it's hard to say even. She made me I don't even know what the material is, but it's a needle case shaped like a catfish.
Oh, wow.
For one of our feasts, she made me a gold bear holding a shell as my salt cellar. You can't, let me stand up a little bit. I don't know if you can see this very well.
Oh, yeah.
It has scallops embroidered in silver with pearls at the joinings. It was made by one of my ladies. It's lined in pale blue.
It's pretty.
We have matching clothing. The Baron and I, this was quite recent actually. And we have artists. Our music guild was Lady, I think it was Ginevra and Peregrine, Northumber. The Recorder Guild still exists.
Yeah.
And was remarkable. I played with it for quite some time. Dance. I believe that my willow initially was for getting the Vikings to dance, if I remember correctly. Ginevra made me a T-shirt that says "Principal Order the Willow," and I have it. I know I have it, but I couldn't find that either. Finding things in my basement at this point is a genuine archaeological dig. And if anyone ever, if someone finds this house in 200 years, it'll puzzle them considerably, because there are clothing and artifacts from 1100 Norway through 1920. My suffrage sash,
Oh, yeah.
Once you start playing dress up, it's all over. You're in it for life.
Yeah, it's a rabbit hole.
It is a rabbit hole. But there are names that I remember. Polydor. I remember we used to go to events alternately. One of us would stay with the children and the other one would go. I went to an event in Champaign, Illinois, I believe it was. And it wasn't Michael of Borshaven. It was Michael. And we arrived at his home, and he saw me in. He was handicapped. He was a handicapped fellow, but he had arranged the bedchamber with candles, and it was wonderful. He had arranged bedding outside the door for my guard. He had a repast in the garden, which was in his back garden. Cold ham. He was a Renaissance fellow.
Mm-hmm.
Cold ham and bread and cheese. It was very impressive. Moments like that. There was a knighting that was, I don't remember whose or when, but it was a complete come real moment. It was, everything fell away, and there we were. And there were others like that. My youngest had a tunic with the different arms of the Baron on it. He was very popular, as all the little ones are. You toddle around.
Yeah.
The weddings, the births, the various people. I'm preaching to the choir, and this will be heard by the choir. So, I'm not saying anything different. But there are a number of us who may not be entirely outside the box, but we're not too far from the box, but we are outside. And where would our illuminators and our calligraphers and our armorers and dancers and musicians be if it weren't for the SCA? And certainly, again, you know this as well or better than I, there is artistry, for lack of a better word, museum quality. I mean, exquisite. I don't know if you're familiar with Harald von Auerbach. He's in the East. He's a baron in the East. Well, he's a member of my household, and I introduced him to the SCA way back when. He was actually my beau in 1964 or 3 and 4. And we've been, close friends ever since. He is a master calligrapher. His work is, as many other people. Lady Genevieve here, who is another incredible and remarkable artist, has done illumination. It makes you weep. It just exquisite things, and they're genuine treasures. And I have other things. I have, from the Baroness herself, the story of St. Bunstable. I don't know if it still is, but Bunstable was a large event here.
I've heard some stories about it, but they're kind of vague. So if you want to tell us about that, that'd be great.
Well, it was a baroness out west, I think in Seattle. I mean, way west. And she came up with St. Bunstable. And we heard about it somewhere and had a St. Bunstable's feast. And I corresponded with her, which in those days, that was why I learned calligraphy, which I went on to teach for many years. because I was embarrassed to reply to a letter I had gotten on a typewriter. Couldn't do that. But St. Dunstable was a little Irish monk, and his order made brandy. Well, as the story goes, and she had written the story, and she did send me a copy of the original book, which I do have. I do have that. I'm not sure where, but I do have it. Dunstable's monastery was set upon by Vikings. And seeing his place, Dunstable immediately went in and consumed as much of the brandy as he possibly could to prevent it falling into the hands of the heathen. Well, they came looking for him with their torches, and Dunstable rose to heaven on a blue flame and has been there ever since, So that's St. Dunstable. And one of the things that we had, someone made a head of St. Dunstable as a boy, right? So we had, and I may even have that, although it's like 40-year-old marzipan, and I'm not sure I even want to look for it. But it was an extremely entertaining feast. And there was always a figure of St. Dunstable that at the end of the feast was covered in brandy and set alight to the, appreciation of the multitude. What was it? We had, for a time there, we've always had exceptional feasts. And subtleties became really a big part of the feasts here. Mm-hmm. One that I remember, another lady who is no longer with us, she was the lady of my bard, who is also no longer with us. I'll let you in on a little secret. In our modern life, age is sort of a problem, and you can spend millions of dollars on things to maintain your youth, mm-hmm. Which, guess what, folks, it doesn't work anyway. But the truth is that the older you get, the better it is. The more fun it is, the more you get away with. I have told youngsters at our museum, which was until the plague hit my employment, mm-hmm. that an example is that if I go to a rock concert, I can just stand there and look frail, and they usher me right up to the front because I'm old, which is utter nonsense. I could jog 2 miles if I had to get to the concert. And they all looked at me and, turned to each other and said, rock concert? But one of the subtleties that we had, and I believe that was the lady who made it, was a castle of gingerbread. And among the crenellations at the top, there were figures in marzipan of myself and my children looking down, and coming into this castle, again in marzipan, were the Baron and a number of the other people in the barony carrying a dragon. It was the most exquisite thing I ever saw. There was another, and I don't remember if it was Bredai who made it, but there was a marzipan figure of myself sitting in a little chair reading a book to 45 gummy bears. It was, our subtleties were breathtaking, and always very good. I admit that I developed a real taste for marzipan.
Mm-hmm.
I've been known to get a tube of it, the Odense comes in a tube, and eat it like a banana. Take that part out. No one needs to know that. Do not do this at home. It's very unhealthy, but having remembered it, I'll probably do it again. But the SCA fills a need and a purpose. And I've had time to think about that, both when participating and not. Baron Tomas was a scholar in the way that a lot of us are, not through education.
Mm-hmm.
And that's absolutely true across any sort of reenacting. There are people who are master scholars, but not academic.
Mm-hmm.
And that has now been appreciated, by the way. And the research and the articles and so on done by reenactors, whether it be Civil War or the fur trade or the SCA or anything else, are now being appreciated. High time.
Mm-hmm.
But in any iteration that it appears, it provides a community, a tribe, a fellowship for people who, through much of history, have been alone, have been outcasts, have been,
Mm-hmm.
Our Lord Rito, who is a master of, I'm sure you probably know him.
Oh, yeah, I do.
Yeah. Amazing. He's amazing. He made the feast once and wove plates, and it was it was good. It was very good. I believe he may have had some help from Shava, who, like all good Jewish mothers, she can really put out food. But there have been so many like that. And I have my arms hang in my house even now.
Mm-hmm.
We have, and when I say we, I venture to say all of Jararvellir and all of every other principality, kingdom, barony, in the entire known world, plus every Civil War household, we all have a lot of really interesting stuff. But the fact that it does become a community at a time when whatever passed as community in the earlier days of our country have been outgrown or whatever. And it's something very, it's a unique, one need only experience a come real moment once. And you realize that you aren't alone.
Mm-hmm.
They really are the body of literature written by people, by reenactors, the articles, the fact that people can do things because they saw how it was done and wanted to see how it felt to do it.
Right.
So, but that was the simple beginning. Go ahead, Baron, do whatever you'd like. And very early, it was predominantly Viking. People didn't have Viking personas necessarily, but that was the flavor of it. We had a high seat, beautiful wood burned one.
Mm-hmm.
and the format was like that. There are many different games. I don't remember. It seems to me that the SCA, the flavor of it is such that people help each other, particularly with garb.
Mhm.
I cannot sew a stitch. I mean, I can't hem a dish towel. I can do Elizabethan blackwork embroidery. You know, I can do crewel work and do, fancy needlework, and I knit always. Cannot make a garment to save my life. So my wardrobe, which has been very nice all along, has been made by my ladies. My regular coronet was made by Einar Lutemaker, as was.
Mm-hmm.
Again, extraordinarily talented, researched eyeglasses and made wooden eyeglasses that tied on with a ribbon.
Neat.
And had the full documentation for them. So, that was where it came from. Thomas and I had a wonderful time at an event in California and brought it home with us. To good advantage, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I always felt sort of sad that I wasn't invited to any of the anniversaries or anything. I would have liked to have gone to something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of crossover. Quite a number of friends we have seen in other worlds and other time places since, and some who continue in the SCA are, I see them at TeslaCon,
Mm-hmm.
which is a steampunk convention.
You do that too, huh?
Oh yes. Yeah, I lucked out. I went to the very first one. I mean, they're here. They're in Madison.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it's easy. I went to the first one and have not missed one since, except, of course, this year.
Right.
But our tickets are good for next year, too. So
that's good.
Yeah. Or for this year now. But, oh, yes, yeah. So I get to be a suffragette and wear my sash.
That's awesome.
I have a long history of yelling about stuff.
Nice.
I was in anti-Vietnam and the civil rights movement and all that. So my first two children are biracial.
Okay.
And they just looked so cute at San Anselmo Seminary in their floral wreaths and little fat bodies. But we've had Madison is Madison, and we went through periods of turmoil, probably because it is Madison. It's described as 77 square miles surrounded by reality, and that's pretty fair. It's a liberal college town with the Capitol at one end of State Street and the university at the other end, and it's a short street. And we don't do things, we do things different here. So, we went through things like that. The Baron began to he became unpopular. Is that a good way to put it?
Probably.
Everyone in the barony at the time, I mean, he drank. And that's a very Viking thing to do, but they tended not to quite lose their grip. And it was a shame because he really had, it was good. I'm not sure, he set things up very well. We then for a time I sat on the high seat by myself.
Okay.
And then it was decided that it would be better to have a baron because I could only sit through so many fighting practices. And I mean, there was even discussion about having an election. This is Madison. We're fair. We, interesting times.
Mm-hmm.
But it worked out. It worked out.
So who followed you?
I believe it was the Baron's wife, Elspeth.
Okay.
And there have obviously been others since.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I haven't kept track especially.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like moving away from a hometown.
Right.
You have friends and people that you love, but you can't entirely keep up with all the goings on.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things is that these families are formed. In our case, households. I don't know if you're familiar with Lars the Fierce.
Nope.
He lives now in Iowa, maybe. He's been king. I mean, in his region, he's a master fighter. He's knighted and the whole. And he's in my household. Came to me at about 17. And I would like to take full credit for him entirely, but can't. But he is my foster son. He is my fosterling. Poets. We've had poets. And it really, there have been, my little daughter in 3rd grade, I think it was, they did a unit on, she's now like 54, mind you. They did a unit on transportation. And all the little children made covered wagons or little stagecoaches. And I had one of the calls from her teacher that I came to know and love. The calls, not the teachers. And she said, okay, so Mary made a weird-looking little wagon that she said is from the Oseberg burial mound. What is that? So I had to explain what it was. The other was that in a discussion this might have been 2nd grade, and I don't remember what precipitated it, but Mary said something about the Bayou Tapestry. And the teacher called her on it and said, I'm sorry, little girl, but that just doesn't sound right to me, and called me. And I said, yeah, it's right. And if you'd like documentation, SCA raised children know things, as do children in any such tribe or family. And it can be interesting.
Yeah, you still hear stories about that today, where people's kids do reports at school and they're like, but they're always fun to hear those stories.
Well, they are, and it carries, and interestingly, I should say, none of my 3 children at all have participated in any form of reenacting since.
Mm.
Not any. I mean, I know a lot of kids carry on with it, fortunately. Mine, and Jararvellir was not so much, there weren't a lot of camping events.
Mm-hmm.
There weren't a lot then. I'm not sure. Oh, one thing that I watched, the other programs with huge delight. I mean, these are old friends, someone said something about the war, and I have to say, I have never been to the war.
Okay.
I never went to the war. And for a time, there were stories circulating about questionable behavior that I had participated in at the war. And it was quite a rumor that went around pretty extensively. And I was really interested in it because I literally have never been to the war, not once. So I don't know who it was, but it sounded like she had a wonderful time. One of the appeals of our current life in the fur trade is there is no hierarchy of any kind. And they're all camping events.
Mm-hmm.
That's all, because that's what, and there's a bit of a different attitude towards authenticity. And one of the reasons for that is it's much easier than it would be in the SCA.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that I feel very strongly about is that all reenactors, whether it's going to a fighting practice at San Anselmo Seminary with naked babies, or people doing the Bristol Renaissance Fair, which
Mm-hmm.
is like the gold standard. All of us, whether we're reenacting Civil War or the fur trade or SCA, anything, all of us at every point, at every juncture, are works in progress. And I don't remember, well, for a very short time, we had a plastic turkey award. If somebody got caught carrying a Coke around, and we didn't say anything. We just sort of slip them a little plastic turkey and say, put away the Coke, The fur trade is really hot on it because we can afford to. Mm-hmm. Because first of all, it's very simple. Second of all, we have primary sources coming out of the woodwork, and so it's very easy.
Okay.
But the main event that we go to at Grand Portage, Minnesota, which is the nexus of the fur trade, everyone takes great pride, and there are no Coke cans. There's no, I mean, literally people don't wear modern glasses.
Oh, wow.
And which means that I, who usually wear them around my neck on a string because I'm old and by gosh, which is great until I don't wear them on a string, and then I drop them and step on them invariably. But the Native women did nothing like knit.
Mm.
There were no sheep. I mean, it really makes kind of a lot of sense. So at our current events, I am sometimes found inside my lodge with the door fastened, wearing my glasses and knitting. because I can't not, and I can't. So,
Right.
yeah.
I have something to do.
Well, yeah. But I have a map somewhere with all 4 kingdoms.
Yeah, let's see your AOA.
Yeah, let's see if I can do this so that all right, let's see. Can you see it very well?
Yep, I can see it.
It's Queen Jessica and King Berengar, I believe. Yeah, Berengar.
Berengar.
And this is that passed for classic calligraphy in AS9.
It's still very nice.
It is. It's marvelous. Well, and I, framed it, and it's been on my wall ever since.
Mm-hmm.
I also have, I think it was Genevieve, Lady Genevieve, who has been a particular friend forever and forever, made me an exquisite scroll for my dragon heart.
Mm.
Someone, and I'm blanking on who, and it's on the wall in the other room, did a scroll for me after the fashion of waltzing with bears. I have a thing for bears.
Oh, nice.
I never had a teddy bear until I was 45, and I made up for it handsomely. And there were always bears, people put bears on things for me and things like that. That meant so much to me. But that's another scroll that's really exceptional. There are such beautiful things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're my treasures.
Yeah, they truly are. And they're things like the gold bear holding a shell as a salt cellar. It's one of I have so many really prized possessions. Summerbird was exceptional. He embroidered a banner for himself. It wasn't his arms, but the owl was his animal.
Mm-hmm.
And he did a needlepoint banner that was exquisite, and he did it at work.
Wow. So
all the sheriffs, poked fun at him and everything. Really marvelous. Lars was embroidering a patch for his backpack, and all his friends came over and said, "Oh, Larry, what are you doing there?" And he said, "Come with me to fighting practice. I'll show you what we do." So it was really splendid. Let me see. I wrote a couple things down so I wouldn't forget them. Let me see. And of course I have. That's why I usually write it down and then can't remember where they are. Oh wait, that's the wrong list. You get to a certain age and people say, write everything down because nobody can remember it. Well, there may be a reason. No, that's it. Okay. I recommend looking up 5 Denials on Merlin's Grave.
Okay.
It's on YouTube, I think.
Okay, I will do that.
Yeah, in fact, I'm pretty sure that Martin Carthy recites it on YouTube.
So we're going to do about an hour, and I do have one last question for you, since you kind of covered everything we had. What advice would you give to someone starting out in the SCA?
Don't be timid. The idea of a stranger is not a part of the SCA. If you come with an interest, you're among family. If you need help with something, ask. And what it means is that you have a healthy imagination, and that, coupled with the people that you meet and the things that you learn and the friendships, along with the skills, benefit every facet of life for the rest of your life. That was proven to me over and over and over.
Mm-hmm.
And I pretty honestly can say for the rest of your life, because I'm getting there. And some of the people that we've sadly lost, like Lady Friederund, who had a laurel, and I mean, her skill was just, we've had many in Yarrow who are so exceptional. Oh, Giles.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he's an armorer, and his bows and everything. Yeah, I mean, countless people. And I apologize to any that I may not be remembering at the moment. We had a British Herald for a while. We used to just come up with stuff for him to announce because it sounded so good. I think it was Lady Friederund. We have puppets, marionettes of myself and Baron Patrick. When those things were all divided up, I got myself. So I have my marionette of myself, which is another whole deal. I would recommend it. I think it nourishes the imagination. And I have to say that in this, the year of our Lord 2021, the one thing that no, that's not true anymore. One thing that I fear is the loss of imagination. When I see children that are, always in front of screens and everything, because playing at something at the level at which it can be done in the SCA or other reenacting is a quality truly that enhances one's life for the rest of your life. It really does.
I don't think you can say it any better than that.
Till fate brings us shoulder to shoulder to stand as brothers again.